When we last left the OSIRIS-REx mission, they had lost their leader and were facing a critical technical issue. The issue was how to tell when the spacecraft was physically close enough to reach out and safely touch Bennu. You know that awkward moment in a relationship. The team had only ever seen distant images of Bennu, and they had no idea what the surface would be like. Prodding it too enthusiastically could destroy the spacecraft. It could be worse than poking a bear. The team created 3 independent instruments that they would use to pinpoint when the robot had touched the surface. They hoped these 3 instruments would serve as redundant backups to trigger TAGSAM's compressed gas cylinder to fire on contact. By the fall of 2016, OSIRIS-REx was built and ready to fly. Getting to this point felt rather like a miracle, and it was. At one point, the team accidentally sent the casing for one of the spectrometers, OVIRS, to a factory in Los Angeles at the same time that it sent its backup as well. The factory burnt to the ground. Then components of the Rex's spectrometer were involved in a traffic accident. Luckily, no one was injured, but the parts were never found. Creating backups for the backups of the backups became standard procedure. Finally, the spacecraft lay stacked atop a United Launch Alliance Atlas V rocket at Florida Cape Canaveral's Air Force Station, ready for its September 8th launch. Then, just days before the launch, a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket that was being refueled on the adjacent launch pad exploded, sending a flood of debris ricocheting across the launch pad. During the explosion, shrapnel struck the water deluge system, which floods launch decks to suppress damage from the rocket's flames. That same system was to supply OSIRIS-REx's launch pad in just a few days. Due to the mission's complicated orbital trajectory, the next launch opportunity was a year away. Emergency responders worked around the clock, and just in time for the September 8th launch, things were a go. It would be a 2-year journey to reach target Bennu. I may have mentioned astronomers are a patient bunch. OSIRIS-REx reached Bennu in the second half of 2018, and literally after decades of work, Bennu became a real world, a diamond-shaped world filled with cliffs and valleys, craters and hills, shadows and light. Well, there goes the beach landing they had originally hoped for. The 2D photos from OSIRIS were not enough to safely plan a landing site, so Queen's guitarist Brian May was brought in. In addition to shredding guitars, selling out stadiums across the world, and being knighted by the King of England, May is a trained astrophysicist who specializes in stereoscopy. May and his colleague Claudia Manzoni put together 3D images that showed just how difficult poking this Bennu the bear would be. 4 sites were finally settled on, and keeping with the avian theme of OSIRIS, they were named Kingfisher, Sandpiper, Osprey, and Nightingale. This picture is of Nightingale. And keeping with the theme of scientists and engineers disagreeing, the engineers favored Osprey, which lacked huge rocks, so there was less risk. The scientists favored Nightingale, as it was a fresher crater suffused with organic materials, so scientifically speaking, it was more valuable. But Nightingale had a giant boulder the size of a 5-story building to try to avoid. They called it Mount Doom. They greenlit Nightingale anyway, so no guts, no glory. Everyone held their breath as OSIRIS-REx hurtled toward Bennu. The 10-foot TAGSAM arm extended, slammed into the surface. The compressed gas cylinder fired, and debris flooded the collection chamber, nearly smothering the onboard cameras. If you are standing and cheering, sit back down. The asteroid didn't cooperate. It had the consistency of a children's ball pit. Cries of, "It's not stopping! It's digging down!" were heard. The spring inside the TAGSAM arm had failed. Since the spacecraft didn't slow down, the detector measuring the resistance of the asteroid pushing back also malfunctioned. Of course. In the end, mathematics saved OSIRIS-REx. Based on the rate of descent calculations, the autonomous software correctly guessed when it was time to escape. The thrusters fired, the spacecraft launched itself back into space, and the team, separated due to COVID, erupted into cheers, giving even more meaning to the phrase, "cheers heard round the world." However, the cheer was soon choked on when it was discovered the sample was leaking into space. A few chunks of the asteroid had wedged under a membrane designed to keep the particles safe, and OSIRIS was becoming a salt shaker. In rapid problem-solving mode, the team sent a series of commands to stow the leaking sample container inside a larger, hermetically sealed capsule for the 3-year ride back to Earth. And it made it, just over a year ago, on September 24th, 2023. A 20-plus year project finally reached completion. And what do the samples contain? Well, that is a whole other story.